He collected trash in silence, until a cry from the alley made him drop everything and run. The sound of trash cans scraping against pavement was the only thing that ever broke the silence in Henry's life. At 58 years old, he didn't speak unless spoken to, and even then, barely. The city of Providence, Rhode Island, still slept when he began his route, bundled in a thick brown jacket that had seen more winters than smiles. Each morning was identical. Same streets, same turns, same bins. The world could have ended overnight, and Henry wouldn't have noticed, unless the garbage wasn't out. He never listened to music, never whistled, never looked at his phone. In his truck, the radio was always off. He liked the silence. It kept the ghosts quiet. His hands, calloused and worn, moved with the precision of a man who had done this thousands of times. Alley behind the old pharmacy, 2 bins, behind the laundromat, cardboard overflow. Then, the diner. Always the diner, where the owner, Gloria, left a cup of black coffee on the back step, steaming gently in the cold. Henry never knocked, never thanked her, but he drank it every morning, and every morning she left it anyway. The rest of the city ignored him. Most didn't even know his name, and that was exactly how he wanted it. But that morning, that one frost-bitten morning in November, something cracked. It happened behind the diner, just as he reached for the second trash bin. A sound that didn't belong. Not metal, not wind. A cry. Faint. Almost too soft to hear. But real. He stopped. The air was still. The engine of his truck hummed quietly. He listened again. A second cry. Sharper. Quicker. Not a cat. Not an animal. A child. Henry dropped the trash bag. He didn't pause to think. His body moved before his brain caught up. He stepped past the dumpsters, into the narrow alleyway that ran behind the building, dark and damp, where the light barely reached. Then he saw her. Curled in on herself like something broken, pressed against the cold wall, was a little girl. No older than 6. No shoes, legs pulled tight to her chest. Dirt on her skin. Hair matted. Cheeks red from the cold. But her eyes were wide open, watching him, afraid to blink. He froze. She didn't move. Neither did he. For a moment, they just stared at each other. 2 strangers, both alone in very different ways. Then, slowly, he stepped forward, pulling off his jacket. "Hey," he said, voice low, careful, as if afraid to scare her off. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." She didn't answer, just stared. "You're freezing." She didn't move. Henry knelt, holding the jacket out. "Here." Still nothing. He gently placed the jacket over her shoulders. Her tiny hands gripped the fabric like it was gold. But she didn't speak. Not a word. Just kept looking at him. "What's your name?" he asked. Nothing. He scanned the alley. No one else. No sign of another adult. No clue where she'd come from. "What happened? Did someone leave you here?" No answer. He hesitated. Logic told him to call the police. Protocol. But something in the girl's expression stopped him. There was terror in her silence. A plea not to be handed off again. He sighed and stood up. "All right, let's get you warm." She didn't fight him. She didn't even flinch when he picked her up, gently, like a porcelain doll. Just pressed her face into his chest and closed her eyes. As he carried her to the truck, Henry Callahan felt something he hadn't felt in years. Responsibility and fear. The kind of fear you feel when you suddenly realize that, for the first time in a very long time, someone might need you, and you don't know what to do. Before we go any further, tell us something. What do you think Henry saw in Ava's eyes that made him run that day? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one. And if you want to stay close to stories that stir something real inside you, subscribe now. And join the journey. Let's keep going. The heater in the truck barely worked, but he turned it on full blast anyway. The girl shivered, her small frame swallowed by the oversized jacket, her bare feet pulled up onto the seat like she was still trying to disappear. Henry glanced at her. She hadn't spoken. Not a sound since that alley. Not a name. Not a tear. Just eyes. Wide, hollow, and watching everything. "Are you hurt?" he asked quietly, not expecting an answer. Silence. He gripped the steering wheel, unsure of where to go. The police station was only a few blocks away. He could drop her off. Let the system handle it. That was the right thing to do. But something in his chest, a weight he hadn't felt in years, anchored his hands. He didn't drive to the station. Instead, he turned left onto Westminster Street and headed toward an old corner diner with faded red bricks and peeling paint. Gloria's place. The only place that still felt familiar. When he pulled up, Gloria was already unlocking the door, steam from her morning prep fogging the windows. She paused when she saw the truck. Then she saw the girl. Her eyes narrowed with worry, and she walked straight to the passenger side. "Henry! Who's this?" He stepped out without answering, came around, and gently opened the door. The girl didn't move. Gloria looked closer and gasped. "She's freezing!" "Jesus! What happened?" "I found her," Henry said, his voice low and steady. "Behind your dumpster." Gloria's expression shifted from confusion to alarm. "What do you mean you found her? Like, alone?" He nodded. "No shoes, no coat, doesn't talk." "God, Henry!" Gloria's hand covered her mouth. She leaned in gently. "Hey, sweetheart. Can you come inside with us? We'll get you warm. We've got hot chocolate, pancakes." Still nothing. The girl only looked at her, eyes blinking slowly, cautiously. Gloria reached out and touched her arm. The girl flinched, just slightly, but enough for both adults to notice. Henry saw it, felt it. Gloria stepped back, composed herself. "Okay, let's not push. Bring her in slow." Inside the diner, the lights flickered to life as Henry carried the girl to a booth in the corner. He placed her on the seat gently, and she sank into it like she was afraid of being too heavy for the world. Gloria moved fast, setting a mug of cocoa in front of her, extra marshmallows. Then she filled a bowl with hot soup, potato and leek, Henry's favorite, and placed it on the table with a spoon. The girl stared at it all. She didn't touch anything. "Do you know her name?" Gloria asked in a whisper as she stood beside Henry. He shook his head. "Nothing yet." Gloria sighed. "You gonna call it in?" "I don't know." "You need to. She's scared." "I don't doubt it, Henry. But if she's in danger?" "I said I don't know." The sharpness in his voice surprised them both. Gloria went quiet, watching him. "You've got that look," she said finally. "What look?" "The same one you had the day after Susan died. Like you were standing on the edge of something and didn't know whether to jump or turn back." Henry didn't answer. He turned back toward the booth. The girl was holding the spoon now, tiny hands, shaking. He pulled a chair across from her and sat down slowly. "Can I sit here?" No response. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. "You don't have to talk. I won't ask questions if you don't want. But I want to make sure you're okay." A long silence. Then, just above a whisper, a voice so small it barely existed. "Ava." Henry's breath caught. He leaned closer. "Ava? That your name?" She nodded once. Gloria, from behind the counter, exhaled hard and crossed herself. "Okay, Ava," Henry said softly. "Thank you for telling me. That's brave." Ava stirred the soup slowly. Then, without warning, she asked, "Is it safe here?" Henry blinked. "Yes, it is." "Are the bad people gone?" The question punched him in the chest. "What bad people?" She didn't answer, just stared at her spoon. Henry reached into his pocket and pulled out an old keychain. A little plastic dinosaur. Something he used to carry around when his son, Michael, was a kid. Back then, Michael thought it was a lucky charm. He slid it across the table. Ava looked at it, then up at him. Her eyes, for the first time, held a flicker of something different. Not trust. Not yet. But something close. He didn't push, just sat with her. While outside, the city woke up. Buses groaning, people yelling, horns blaring. But inside the diner, the world was quiet again. Except now, it didn't feel empty. Gloria approached quietly, lowering her voice. "We've got to think this through. Someone's going to come looking for her." Henry didn't look up. "Yeah. Should we call?" "No. Not yet. She could be in real danger." "I know. So why are you stalling?" "Because if I were 6 years old, barefoot and terrified in an alley, and the first adult I met threw me into a system of strangers, I don't think I'd trust anyone again." Gloria stared at him. "You're not equipped for this, Henry." "I wasn't equipped to lose a wife or a son." A silence stretched between them. Gloria softened. "Okay, for now. She can stay here. We'll figure it out." But Ava was already watching them, listening, reading everything in their tone, the way only a child who's seen too much can. And for the first time, she picked up the spoon and took a bite. The diner's front door chimed softly as another customer walked in, a delivery guy. But inside that corner booth, the rest of the world might as well not have existed. Henry remained seated across from Ava, who now sipped her cocoa with both hands, the sleeves of his jacket covering her wrists completely. Gloria moved through the kitchen with practiced rhythm, flipping pancakes and making quiet calls to suppliers, but she kept glancing over, keeping one eye on Ava. Henry broke the silence first. "I used to come here every Sunday. With my son, we'd sit right in this booth. He always got blueberry pancakes, extra syrup, wouldn't touch the crusts." Ava didn't speak, but her eyes shifted, curious. "He's a grown man now. Haven't seen him in years." Pause. "Sometimes people drift," Henry added, "even when they don't mean to." Ava blinked slowly, her expression unreadable. He tried again. "You said the bad people are gone. Did something happen to the person you were with?" Ava lowered her eyes to the mug. Silence again. Then, in a fragile voice, "I ran." Henry straightened. "You ran?" She nodded. "He was yelling, throwing stuff. Mama told me to go, said not to look back." Henry swallowed hard. His heart began to pound. "Who was yelling?" Ava hesitated. "Uncle Dan." He froze. "Uncle Dan." Henry had heard that name before, years ago. Somewhere in the cobwebs of his mind, it rattled a memory loose, but the thought slipped through before he could catch it. "Was he living with you and your mom?" She nodded, barely. "Where's your mom now?" Ava pressed her lips together, eyes watering. "I don't know." Henry didn't press. Whatever had happened, it was too fresh, too raw. He looked toward the front of the diner, toward Gloria, who was watching from the counter. She gave him a look, firm but careful. "She needs help, Henry," it said without words. But Henry wasn't ready. Not yet. "All right," he said softly. "We'll figure it out." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a napkin, scribbled his phone number on it. "I'm going to keep this in your jacket, okay, just in case. If you're ever scared or lost again, you call this number. It rings straight to me. Understand?" Ava stared at it like it was some kind of lifeline, then nodded. A loud crash from the kitchen made her flinch violently. A metal tray had fallen. Instantly, her entire body tensed and her hands flew up to her ears. Henry reached across the table instinctively, not to touch, but to ground her. Hey, it's all right, just a tray. Nothing's wrong." But Ava was already shaking. Gloria appeared with alarming speed, kneeling beside the booth. "Sweetheart, it's okay. Just a noise. Nothing's going to happen." Ava curled into herself. The cocoa spilled, forgotten. Her breathing turned sharp and quick. Henry stood. "We need to get her out of here." Gloria nodded. A few minutes later, the two of them were in his truck again, this time with a fresh blanket Gloria had insisted on bringing. Ava clutched it around her shoulders as Henry drove toward the south side of town. Not to any official building, but to his home. He hadn't taken anyone there in over a decade. His small house sat quietly on a dead-end street, lined with maple trees now bare from the season. The lawn was mostly leaves and silence. No neighbors home, no one watching. He parked, got out, and opened her door. "Come on, just for a while." Ava hesitated before stepping out, holding the blanket like a shield. The house smelled of old wood, faint coffee, and something deeply lonely. It was clean but lived in. Mismatched furniture, a faded photo on the mantel, dusty books stacked on the floor. Henry turned on the heat, then the kettle. "You want something warm again? I've got tea. Maybe chicken noodle soup?" Ava stood in the middle of the living room, not answering, just absorbing. He didn't rush her. She walked slowly to the fireplace and stopped at a photo. "Who's that?" she asked quietly. Henry looked. It was a picture of his wife and his son, much younger, in uniform, arms slung around his mom. "That's Susan," he said, voice thick. "My wife. She's gone now. And that's Michael, my boy. He left a long time ago." Ava reached out and touched the glass frame gently, then whispered, "She looks kind." Henry smiled, despite himself. She was. A beat. "You miss them?" Every day, every hour, every time he turned around and expected to hear someone call his name. He nodded. "Yeah, I do." Ava looked up at him then, really looked. Something about his answer made her shoulders drop just slightly. Henry walked into the kitchen and returned with a small bowl of soup, placing it gently on the coffee table. "Eat what you can. I'll find you something to wear, something warm." As he disappeared down the hall, Ava climbed onto the couch and sat with her legs crossed beneath her, the blanket still wrapped tightly around her. She stared at the soup, then at the photo again. When Henry returned, he was carrying a thick sweatshirt and a pair of old wool socks. "These might be too big, but they'll do for now." He placed them on the armrest beside her. Then he sat in his recliner, not too close, just enough to keep her in view. They sat like that for several minutes, the only sounds the ticking of the wall clock and the soft hum of the heater. Finally, Ava spoke again. "Why did you help me?" The question stunned him. He didn't have a real answer, not one that made logical sense, so he told her the truth. "Because you looked like someone who'd been let down one too many times. And I know what that feels like." Ava looked down, then back at him, and for the first time since he found her in that alley, she smiled. A tiny, fleeting smile. But it was enough. It was a beginning. The sun had already dipped behind the rooftops by the time Henry pulled the thick curtains closed. The house darkened softly, only the warm orange glow from a single lamp spilling across the living room. Ava had fallen asleep on the couch. She didn't curl up like most children did. She lay tense, her knees pulled up, one arm gripping the blanket like a rope. Even in sleep, she didn't relax. Not completely. The wool socks Henry had given her drooped off her small feet, and the sleeves of the sweatshirt hung over her fingers like drapes. Henry stood in the doorway and watched her, arms crossed. He hadn't realized how long it had been since the house had held another soul. A sound other than his own movements. The slight wheeze of her breathing, the tiny clicks of her teeth chattering even while she dreamed, filled the quiet in a way that didn't feel invasive. It felt necessary. In the kitchen, he opened a drawer and pulled out a stack of old photographs. They were bent at the corners, faded from time, and smelled faintly of smoke and lemon cleaner. Most of them were of Michael. One, in particular, caught his attention. Michael, at 8 years old, standing in the backyard holding a toy plane. Susan had taken that photo. Henry remembered the moment clearly. He'd just finished mowing the lawn. The boy had run up, beaming, proud of the tiny craft he'd built. It was the last summer they were truly happy. Back before the shouting, before the silence, before Michael had slammed the door and never come back. Henry sighed and placed the photo face down. He turned back to Ava, still asleep, and quietly took a blanket from the hallway closet. He approached the couch and gently laid it over her, careful not to wake her. But the second the fabric touched her arm, she startled. Eyes wide, breathing fast, ready to run. "It's just me," Henry said, hands raised. "It's okay." Ava sat up, blinking hard, trying to reorient herself. "You were sleeping," he said gently. "Thought you might be cold." She looked around, confused, then whispered, "What time is it?" "A little past 6. She rubbed her eyes. "Is it still today?" Henry wasn't sure what she meant at first, but then it hit him. She had no idea how long she'd been out there, or how long she'd been alone. "Yeah," he said softly. "Still today." She relaxed a little, then looked down at her hands. "I had a dog once. Her name was Penny. She was small, with curly fur. She always came to wake me up when I had nightmares." Henry sat down slowly in the recliner again. "What happened to Penny?" "She stopped barking one night. Then she was gone." A long silence fell between them. Then Ava looked up, serious. "I think Uncle Dan did something." Henry's jaw tightened. "Did you ever tell your mom?" he asked. "She said we'd leave soon, but we didn't. She just stopped talking about it." "Where did you live?" "In a yellow house, on a hill with a broken fence. Lots of trees. It was far, I think." Henry's breath caught. That description, it stirred something deep in his memory. A house like that had belonged to someone. Years ago. He pushed the thought away for now. "You're safe here," he said. "I promise." Ava nodded, but her eyes stayed distant. They sat in silence again. Then she whispered, "You're sad, like me." He looked at her. "I can tell," she added. "Your house smells like someone left." Henry didn't respond. He couldn't. Ava stood up and wandered toward the fireplace. She touched the photo frame again, then asked quietly, "Where did your son go?" Henry hesitated. "He joined the army, moved away. We had a fight before he left." "Did you ever say sorry?" Henry looked at her for a long moment. "No, I should have." She didn't judge him, just nodded, as if she understood more than she should. Then, quietly, "Sometimes sorry comes too late." He had no words for that. She turned to him, suddenly alert. "Can I stay here?" The question landed like a stone between them. He looked at her, really looked at her. A child who didn't cry, didn't beg, didn't ask for toys or candy or noise. She asked for safety, like someone who knew what it meant to be without it. "You can stay tonight," he said carefully. "One night at a time. We'll figure the rest out together." She nodded solemnly. "Okay." Later, as she curled up in the small guest room, his wife's old sewing room, converted in haste with blankets and pillows, Henry stood in the hallway, watching the door. She didn't ask for a night light, didn't ask for the door to stay open, but he left it cracked anyway. As he walked back into the living room, he picked up the photo of Susan and Michael again. This time, he didn't look away. "Michael," he murmured, "where the hell are you?" Because now, something was gnawing at him. That name, Uncle Dan. That yellow house. The way Ava described her mother. It wasn't just any girl who had stumbled into his life. He knew that house, knew that name, Dan. The man who dated Susan's sister. And that meant, if the connection was real, Ava wasn't just a lost child. She was family. Morning light crept through the half-closed blinds, spilling across the old wooden floor in Henry's hallway like threads of gold. The air inside the house was still, almost too still, as if it were holding its breath. Henry hadn't slept. He sat at the kitchen table, a cold mug of coffee beside him, staring at a name scribbled on a torn grocery receipt. Dan Forrester. He hadn't heard that name in over 15 years, not since Susan's sister, Emily, had shown up at their door bruised and ashamed, asking to stay for a few nights. Henry remembered the conversation like it was yesterday. "It was Dan," Emily had whispered. "He gets mean, especially after dark." Susan had wanted to help. Henry had told her to stay out of it, that people like Dan didn't change. They just waited. Ava's voice from the night before echoed in his head. "Uncle Dan was yelling. Mama told me to run." Henry stared at the name, then opened an old drawer filled with dusty envelopes and utility bills. He found what he was looking for, an address book, yellowed and cracked. Flipping through the pages, he landed on E. There it was, Emily Green. 310 Wheeler Hill Road. It matched the memory, the yellow house, the broken fence, the line of trees. It was time to go back. But first, he checked on Ava. He stood quietly at the door to the guest room. It was cracked open just slightly, and through it, he saw her curled up under the thick quilt, still asleep. The room looked different now, not because it had changed, but because she had been in it. Her sneakers, still damp from the alley, were lined up neatly against the wall. His oversized sweatshirt hung over the back of a chair. She'd folded her blanket in the night, not completely, but enough to show a kind of awareness. A need not to be a burden. Henry closed the door softly. By the time Ava came into the kitchen, rubbing her eyes, he already had toast and eggs on the table. She slid into the chair slowly. "Morning," he said. She nodded, still waking up. "You sleep okay?" A shrug. Then, "No yelling here." Henry looked up from the stove. "There won't be. Not here." Ava looked around. "This your house forever?" 28 years, he said, pouring her a glass of juice. "Bought it when Michael was born. Backyard was just mud then. I laid every tile in that bathroom myself." She smiled faintly. "It smells like Dad's?" He raised an eyebrow. "That good?" or bad. "Good," she said, then added quietly, "Safe." Henry sat across from her. "I've got to check on something today. Won't be long. You can come with me if you want." Ava hesitated. "Where?" "A house. Someone I used to know lived there. I want to see if it's still standing." Ava froze. "Is it yellow?" He paused. "Yeah." "With the broken fence?" He nodded slowly. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "That's where I ran from." Henry's pulse ticked faster. "You're sure?" She nodded. "Did your mom live there too?" Ava blinked hard. "She was there, sometimes. Then she wasn't." "What do you mean?" "She would go away a lot. Uncle Dan said she needed to learn her place. Then, one day, she didn't come back." Henry's hand clenched on the table. He stood. "All right, come with me. You don't have to get out of the truck. I just want to look around." She got up wordlessly and followed him. The ride out of Providence took almost 40 minutes. The landscape shifted from rows of houses and cracked sidewalks to long stretches of pine trees and hills glazed with frost. When they turned onto Wheeler Hill Road, Ava pressed her face to the window. There it was. The yellow house sat at the top of a small hill, its shutters crooked, the roof bowed. The yard was overgrown. The fence leaned like it had been half-kicked down. "Is anyone home?" Ava asked, voice barely audible. "I don't know," Henry said. He parked the truck down the road. "You stay here." Ava reached for his sleeve. "What if he's there?" "I'll be quick." He stepped out, crunching gravel under his boots. The air was sharp, and his breath came out in visible puffs. As he approached the porch, the memories flooded back. This place, the porch with the sagging step, the faded wind chime, the dented mailbox, it all came rushing back. Susan had been here once. He remembered her crying on the way home, furious that her sister wouldn't leave Dan for good. He rang the bell. No answer. He knocked. Nothing. Then he tested the door. It creaked open with an eerie slowness. The smell hit him instantly. Mildew, alcohol, dust, and something sour underneath it all. Like rot. He stepped inside. "Hello?" The house was empty, broken. Trash littered the floor. A shattered lamp lay in the corner. There were stains on the carpet, a shattered photo frame on the ground. He picked it up. It was Emily, and next to her, a small girl, maybe 4 years old, smiling, with the same sharp eyes Ava had. He took the photo and backed out. Back at the truck, Ava was hugging her knees in the passenger seat. "Was anyone there?" she asked. "No," Henry said. "Not anymore." He handed her the photo. She stared at it for a long moment. "That's me," she whispered. Henry nodded. "I think your mom was my wife's sister." Ava looked at him. "Then, are we family?" "Yeah," he said softly. "We are." Ava turned her head toward the window, her reflection barely visible. "I knew I didn't come from nowhere." Henry didn't speak, just started the engine. As they drove off, neither of them saw the man watching from the trees. A tall figure, hands in his pockets, unmoving. Dan was back, and he had seen them. The truck rolled back into Providence, just as a light rain began to fall. The windshield wipers dragged across the glass with a slow, tired rhythm. Much like Henry's thoughts. Ava was asleep again in the passenger seat, curled into herself with the blanket up to her chin. The photograph still rested in her lap, clutched in one hand like a piece of her she'd finally found. Henry didn't turn on the radio. He didn't need the noise. His mind was already too loud. The yellow house had stirred something in him, memories buried under years of silence and guilt. He remembered how Susan had begged him to check on Emily when she'd stopped answering calls, how he hadn't, how he said, "She made her bed. Let her lie in it." That memory stung now. And Dan. The house was empty. But something felt off. It wasn't just abandoned. It felt vacated. Recently, as if someone had left in a hurry. And then that flicker, that strange instinctive feeling that he was being watched when he turned to leave. He shook it off. No time for ghosts. They pulled into his driveway. The sky was darker now, the rain thickening into a cold drizzle. Henry parked and turned to Ava. "Hey," he said gently. "We're home." She stirred, eyes fluttering open, then blinked at the gray light outside. "Already?" "Yeah. You hungry?" She shrugged, then sat up and rubbed her eyes. "Do you think she's okay?" "Your mom?" he asked. A nod. "I don't know," he said honestly. "But we're going to find out." Inside, he made grilled cheese and tomato soup. Ava sat at the table, quiet but watchful. She ate slowly, dipping the sandwich into the soup like it was a ritual. Henry poured himself some black coffee and leaned on the counter. "You used to make this for your son?" she asked suddenly. "Yeah, when he was sick, or when Susan was out late. Michael always liked it with extra cheese." She gave a soft smile. "That's how I like it too." He didn't respond, but something about that made the air warmer. When they finished, Ava stood and began carrying her plate to the sink. She wasn't told to. She just did it. Henry raised an eyebrow. "You don't have to." "I want to." He nodded. She stood at the sink, staring at the water before turning to him. "What's going to happen to me?" He put his mug down. "I'm not sure," he said honestly. "But I don't want you going back to that house, or to anyone who'd hurt you." "You think they'll come looking?" "I think they might." A long silence followed. Ava stepped forward, voice low. "If they come, will you protect me?" Henry's breath caught. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked to the small drawer under the hallway mirror, pulled something out, and returned. He opened his palm. It was a spare key. He placed it on the table beside her. "This is yours," he said. "You don't have to knock to come in here anymore. This is your home now, as long as you want it to be." Ava's eyes filled with something he hadn't seen before. Not just gratitude, but shock. As if no one had ever told her she belonged somewhere. She picked up the key and held it tightly. Henry cleared his throat. "All right, kiddo. Movie night?" She blinked. "Like, in real movies? With popcorn?" "Popcorn, couch blankets, bad 80s movies. The whole deal." A soft laugh escaped her lips, quick, almost embarrassed. But it was real. That night, under a pile of blankets in the living room, Ava lay beside Henry on the couch as a cheesy science fiction movie played on the small television. Her head rested against a cushion, and for the first time, she looked content. Not safe, not yet, but closer. Halfway through the movie, Henry rose and went to the kitchen to refill his coffee. He leaned on the sink, staring out the window into the rain-slicked backyard. Then he saw it. A shadow, far at the edge of the tree line, just standing there. Still. Too still. He blinked. Looked again. It was gone. He shut the lights and checked the door locks, then turned back toward the hallway. Ava stood there, holding the photograph from earlier. "Is it okay if I put this in my room?" she asked. He nodded. "Of course." As she turned away, he called gently, "Ava." She stopped. "I'll protect you, no matter what." She didn't speak. just nodded once, then disappeared into the room. That night, Henry didn't sleep. He sat in his recliner, shotgun across his lap, lights off, listening to the rain. Because something told him Dan wasn't gone. Not yet. By the time morning came, the rain had stopped, but the silence left behind felt heavier than the storm. Henry sat on the edge of his bed, same clothes from the night before, shotgun still leaning against the wall. He hadn't closed his eyes once. He didn't trust the quiet. Not anymore. Down the hall he could hear Ava stirring. Light footsteps on wood, a drawer opening, the sound of the faucet running. A moment later, she peeked around the corner, her hair messy from sleep, wearing the same oversized sweatshirt. "You didn't sleep," she said. He looked up, surprised. "How do you know?" "You look like the couch cushion," she replied flatly, with a hint of a smirk. He chuckled despite himself. "Did something happen?" she asked more quietly now. Henry hesitated. "Just had a feeling." "Was it about him?" Henry nodded. Ava looked down at the key in her hand. She'd slept with it, probably held it all night. "You want breakfast?" he offered, standing. "I can help," she said, already stepping into the kitchen. As they made eggs and toast together, there was something in Ava's face. A quiet strength. Like someone who had spent years in the dark and had learned to adapt to it. Henry watched her gently stir the eggs, careful not to let anything spill. "You ever cooked before?" he asked. She nodded. "Sometimes, when I had to." "What did you like to make?" "Macaroni and pancakes from the box." He smiled. "Maybe tomorrow we'll try real pancakes." She paused, then said softly, "If there's a tomorrow." Henry stopped cold. He turned to her, voice low and steady. "Ava, there will be." She nodded, but didn't answer. Before he could say more, a knock came at the front door. 3 slow, solid knocks. Not a neighbor. Not a package. Henry's blood went cold. Ava froze, eyes wide. "Go to your room," Henry whispered. "Now." She backed away instantly, silent as a breath. Henry walked to the front window, peeking through the blinds. His heart slammed in his chest. It wasn't Dan. It was Michael, his son, standing on the porch, in full police uniform. The door opened slowly. Michael looked older, leaner. His jaw was tighter, and his hair was cropped military short. He had that rigid stance, like someone always ready to react. But his eyes, they still held the same weight they did when he was 17. The same wounded fire. They stared at each other for a moment. No greeting. No small talk. Michael finally spoke. "You gonna invite me in?" Henry stepped aside without a word. Michael walked in, scanning the room. His eyes stopped on the blanket on the couch, the dish in the sink, the photograph missing from the mantel. "I got a report," he said, turning back. "About a missing girl. About a man matching your description found carrying a child away from an alley 3 days ago." Henry said nothing. Michael continued. "What the hell is going on, Dad?" That word hung in the room. Dad. It hadn't been used in 10 years. Henry folded his arms. "Her name's Ava." Michael narrowed his eyes. "Where is she now?" "Safe." "That's not what I asked." Henry's voice didn't rise, but it hardened. "She's safe. That's all that matters." Michael's jaw flexed. Then came a whisper from the hallway. "Is he a cop?" Both men turned. Ava stood there, barefoot, the key clutched in her hand, eyes locked on Michael. Michael looked at her, really looked, then back to his father. "Is this her?" Henry nodded. Michael stepped forward slowly, crouching to her eye level. "Hi," he said softly. "I'm Michael. I'm a police officer. You don't have to be scared." Ava stepped back. He didn't press. Henry moved closer. "She's your cousin's kid." Michael blinked. "Emily's?" Henry nodded. "Her daughter." Michael stood up slowly, the pieces clicking in place. "Then that means she's our family." Michael stared at the girl again, his tone softening. "We've been looking for her. There's a bulletin out across the whole county. Missing child alert. Anonymous tip led to you. I didn't know it was this." Henry nodded. "Now you do." Michael stepped back, running a hand over his face. "Jesus!" "Her mom's missing," Henry added. "And Dan might still be out there." Michael froze. "Dan? Dan Forrester? You remember him?" "I remember wanting to break his nose when I was 16. Mom said to stay out of it, that it wasn't our business." Henry looked down. "I said the same." "Yeah," Michael said bitterly. "I remember." They stood in silence. Then Michael turned to Ava again. "You hungry?" She looked at Henry. He nodded. Ava whispered, "Okay." Michael walked to the kitchen, opening a cabinet. "Still keep the cereal on the top shelf?" Henry smirked. "Some things don't change." As Michael poured cereal into a bowl and Ava sat cautiously at the table, Henry watched them, his son, and this girl who had somehow walked into both of their lives and changed everything. And in that moment, something passed between them. Something wordless. Something healing. But it wouldn't last, because Michael's phone buzzed. He checked it, and his face shifted immediately. "What is it?" Henry asked. Michael looked up, pale. "That house," he said. "The yellow one. It burned down last night." Henry's blood ran cold. "What?" "Burned to the foundation. Sheriff called me this morning. They think it was arson." Ava's spoon stopped midair. Michael added, "No one was found, but fresh tire tracks were spotted nearby." Henry whispered, "He's erasing the past." Michael locked eyes with him. "I think Dan knows she's still alive." The news of the house fire hung over the room like a silent scream. Michael's words still echoed. Dan knows she's alive. Ava sat stiffly at the kitchen table, her bowl of cereal untouched. Her small fingers traced the rim of the spoon again and again, as if trying to hold on to anything that felt stable. Henry stood at the window, arms crossed, watching the empty street with the eyes of a man waiting for a storm he couldn't see yet, but knew was coming. Michael paced slowly behind them, phone still in hand. The fire department said the flames gutted the place, started at the back, kitchen area. Accelerants found near the rear entrance. Intentional. "Anyone see who did it?" Henry asked without turning. "No cameras that far out. It's all private land." "But?" Michael paused. They found a photo. Scorched, but visible. Henry finally turned. Michael held out a clear evidence bag. Inside it was a singed piece of photo paper, the same one Ava had shown him, the same photo she had slept with under her pillow. He went back to erase it, Michael said. Whatever proof of her life was left, he wanted it gone. Ava looked up, whispering, "That means he's close." Michael nodded. "Maybe even here." Henry stepped toward the hallway. "I'm getting my truck. We're not staying here." Michael raised a hand. "Hold on. We can't just run. The department needs statements. I need to report this officially, Dad." Henry stopped cold. There it was again. Dad. A word that hit like a brick every time it left Michael's mouth, because it came covered in years of silence and unsaid things. Henry's voice dropped. You want to fill out paperwork while this guy gets closer to her? I want to protect her. Same as you, Michael snapped. But I also want to do it the right way. You think I wear this badge just to make you uncomfortable? Henry's jaw clenched. I don't care about the badge. I care about her. Michael stepped closer. Then listen to me. You can't fight ghosts with shotguns and instinct. This isn't 20 years ago. We do things different now. You mean we do nothing now? Henry fired back. We wait for someone to get hurt before we move. Ava stood. Stop. Both men froze. She walked toward them slowly, bare feet soft against the floor. Her voice was small but sharp. I don't care about badges, or who's mad at who, or what happened 10 years ago. All I care about is not going back. Michael and Henry looked at her, both humbled. Ava looked between them. You said you'd protect me. I meant it, Henry said. So did I, Michael added. Then stop yelling, she whispered. Henry lowered his gaze. I'm sorry. Michael did too. Me too. She walked over and sat beside Henry. What do we do now? Michael exhaled. We move her to a safe house. I know someone. Old partner of mine runs an off-the-books place for vulnerable minors. It's quiet, secure. Only a few people know it exists. Henry looked unsure. Michael added, It's just temporary. While we figure out where Dan might be, if he's tracking her, we need to throw off his trail. Ava gripped her spoon again. Will you come too? Michael hesitated. I'll visit, but I'm a cop. If I'm seen with you, it could draw more attention. She turned to Henry. He didn't blink. I go where you go. Ava nodded once. That was enough. Michael made a call. Quiet. Coded. 30 minutes later, a silver unmarked sedan pulled up to the side alley, headlights off. Henry packed only what was necessary. A bag of clothes, Ava's photo, and 2 books from the shelf. He didn't speak as he zipped the bags, but his hands trembled slightly. Before they left, Ava walked to the hallway mirror. She took the spare key, the one Henry had given her, and placed it gently on the mantel. Henry saw it. You don't want to take it? She shook her head. I want it here, so I know where it is, in case I come back. Henry kneeled beside her. You'll always come back. She hugged him. No words, just small arms around his neck, tight and quick, like she knew she couldn't hold on too long. Then, they were gone. The safe house sat on the outskirts of Warwick, hidden behind an old church, surrounded by trees and silence. Inside, it was small but warm. 2 bedrooms, thick locks on the doors, stocked pantry. The woman running it, Carla, was former NYPD, sharp-eyed and no-nonsense, but gentle with Ava. Henry stayed in the guest room, Ava in the one beside it. Michael came every evening, never in uniform, always through the back door. And slowly, the rhythm returned. Breakfast, books, walks in the garden behind the fence, quiet dinners. But one night, almost a week in, Ava couldn't sleep. She crept to Henry's room, blanket over her shoulders. He opened his eyes immediately. You okay? She nodded, then asked, Can I stay? He pulled back the blanket. She climbed in and lay beside him, quiet. After a long pause, she whispered, Did you and Michael stop talking because of me? Henry turned his head. No. We stopped talking because we were both hurting, and neither of us knew how to say it out loud. Are you still mad at him? Henry stared at the ceiling. No, he said finally. I think I've just missed him for so long, I forgot how not to. Ava was quiet for a long time. Then, You think he'll come for me? Henry didn't need to ask who he was. Yes, he said truthfully, but he won't win. Ava reached for his hand under the blanket. Henry held it. They both fell asleep that way. But 2 towns over, in a motel off the interstate, a man named Dan Forrester sat in a booth alone, watching traffic through the window. In front of him, a crumpled photo lay on the table. Ava, at 4 years old, smiling. In his pocket, he had something else. A keychain, plastic, shaped like a dinosaur. And he wasn't smiling. The following morning, Henry woke up before the sun rose. For the first time in weeks, Ava wasn't beside him. The small warmth he had grown used to, the quiet presence, was gone. He sat up fast, heart pounding. Then he heard the soft hum of Carla's old coffee maker from the kitchen. He followed the sound. There she was. Ava stood barefoot, wrapped in her blanket like a cape, staring out the window as the early light crept between the trees. Her expression was still, calm in a way that didn't belong to someone her age. He stepped quietly beside her. "You're up early." She nodded. "Bad dreams?" he asked. "No," she said softly. "No dreams at all." He looked at her. "That's worse sometimes." She glanced up. "I think I'm disappearing from myself." He didn't answer. There was no answer for that. Only time. Only love. Only presence. "Want breakfast?" he offered. "I want to know when it ends," she said. "I want to know when I stop looking over my shoulder." Henry leaned against the counter. "I wish I could tell you. But the truth is, some things don't end. We just get better at facing them." Ava looked at him, her voice quieter now. "And what if he finds us?" "He won't." "And if he does?" Henry stared at the window. "Then he'll have to get through me." A pause. Then she whispered, "Promise." He turned to her fully. "With everything I've got." Just then, the door creaked. Michael stepped in, rain on his jacket, face tense. Henry knew immediately. "What is it?" Michael pulled out a folded piece of paper from his jacket. A police report. "They found a match," he said. "Motel security footage. Southbound off I-95. Dan. 2 nights ago." Henry straightened. "How close?" Michael looked at Ava before answering. 15 miles. Ava didn't flinch. Michael handed Henry the paper. He checked in under an alias, paid cash, left before sunrise. But that's not all. He pulled out a small plastic bag. Inside, the dinosaur keychain. Henry stared at it in disbelief. Ava's eyes widened. "That's yours." Michael nodded. "Clerk said he left it on the table, placed it there deliberately, like a message." Henry took the bag slowly, his fingers trembling. "He knows." "He's watching," Michael confirmed, "and he's getting bolder." Carla entered the kitchen from the back hall holding a clipboard. "There's more. We just got word from social services. Emily's body was found." Silence. It hit Ava like a blow. She didn't cry, didn't scream. She just froze. Henry knelt immediately, steadying her by the shoulders. "Where?" he asked, voice shaking. "Abandoned property in Cumberland," Carla said quietly. "Looks like she's been gone for weeks. We're still waiting on full autopsy. But there were signs she was trying to get help. A notebook with names. One of them was Henry's." Ava whispered, "She was looking for you." Henry's throat tightened. "I didn't know." Michael rubbed a hand over his mouth, voice hoarse. "She was trying to get Ava away from him. Probably left her in the alley on purpose, knowing someone, anyone, would find her." Ava sank to the floor, silent, still holding the blanket like it could protect her from the weight of it all. Henry sat beside her. He didn't speak. He just held her. Time slowed. After a long moment, Ava spoke. "I want to go to the funeral." Michael hesitated. "There won't be a public one." The state will— I don't care, she interrupted. She deserves to be seen. Someone has to stand there and say she was real. Carla looked at Michael, then at Henry. Henry said, "Then we'll make it happen." That afternoon, they drove to a small cemetery west of the city. The state hadn't even ordered a headstone, just a temporary wooden marker. Henry had insisted on flowers, white lilies, Ava's choice. As the wind blew gently through the trees, the three of them stood together. No priest, no officials, just family. Ava stepped forward, knees trembling, but her voice steady. "My mom wasn't perfect, but she tried. Even when everything hurt, she kept trying. And she saved me. I don't think she ever stopped loving me." She paused, her small hands clenched at her sides. "And I won't stop loving her?" Henry swallowed hard. Michael stared down, eyes wet. After a moment, Ava stepped back, and something changed in her then. Not strength, not yet, but certainty. The kind that only comes from saying goodbye. That night, back at the safe house, Henry found a folded note on his pillow, written in Ava's handwriting. "I want to stay with you, not just until he's gone, forever, if I can." He sat on the bed, reading it again and again, then went to find Michael. They stood outside, under the porch light. Henry said, "She needs stability." Michael nodded. "And she wants you." "I want her too." Michael looked at him for a long moment. "Then let's make it official." Henry blinked. "You'd support that?" Michael smiled, small but real. "I was raised by a man who knew how to show up, even when it was hard. Ava deserves that too." Henry's voice cracked. "Thank you." Michael placed a hand on his shoulder. "I still have my doubts," Henry chuckled. "So do I." "But," Michael continued, "we're doing this together. You, me, Ava. We're a family, whether we planned it or not." And in that quiet, the past didn't vanish, but it softened, just enough to let something new begin. Miles away, in the back of a rusted pickup, Dan stared at a printed photograph. It was Ava, smiling at the cemetery. His fingers gripped the edge until it tore. And beside him, in a plastic bag, a gun. He was done watching. The wind howled outside the safe house that night, slamming tree branches against the side of the building like the world was knocking, urgently, angrily. Inside, it was quiet. Ava lay asleep in her bed, wrapped in 2 blankets, one arm curled beneath her pillow, the other resting over a small stuffed dog that Carla had given her, something soft to hold when the nightmares tried to return. Henry sat awake in the living room, the same old habit. He watched the door, listened to the wind, and waited. Michael was due back at midnight after his shift, but something in Henry's gut felt wrong, off, like the air had shifted, not from weather, but from something heavier, something watching. He got up, checked the locks, again, then again. His hand hovered over the phone. Ava stirred, a soft creak from her room. He started to walk toward her door. Then the lights went out. Total blackout. The heater cut off. The fridge stopped humming, and silence fell like a blade. Henry's breath caught. Then the front door creaked. Not loudly. Just enough. He reached behind the couch, pulled the baseball bat he had hidden there days ago. He didn't speak, didn't move. Then he heard the floorboard groan. Second one from the entrance. Someone was inside. Henry moved slowly, silently, and then a voice, low, familiar. Henry. He turned toward the shadows. Dan's silhouette stood in the hallway, broad, pale, eyes catching the moonlight like glass. Henry didn't blink. "You've come to the wrong house," he said coldly. Dan stepped forward, unhurried. She's mine. She was always mine. Emily didn't know what she had. She poisoned her. Henry stepped in front of Ava's door. Dan tilted his head. She's not your kid. You're a broken old man, pretending he still matters. You burned the house, Henry said. You left her with nothing. Dan smirked. She was nothing. A beat passed, and then, click. Dan raised the gun. Henry didn't think. He charged. They collided in the dark. The gun went off. The sound shook the entire house. Wood splintered. Glass shattered. Henry drove Dan backward, slamming him against the wall. The gun dropped. They grappled in silence. Two men, decades apart, but both filled with something raw, ugly, unfinished. Dan landed a hit. Henry staggered. But he didn't fall. He reached for the bat, swung. It hit Dan in the ribs with a sick crack. Dan fell, gasping. But as Henry raised the bat again, Dan kicked him hard, sent him flying back into the hallway table. The world spun. Then another sound. Ava's voice. Stop! Both men froze. She stood there in the hallway, small frame lit by the moonlight through the shattered window. Her eyes locked on Dan. I'm not yours, she said. Dan's breath hitched. I never was, she added. You tried to break me, but you didn't. She stepped forward. Dan stared at her like a ghost had risen. I'm not afraid of you anymore, Ava said. Dan lunged toward her, but before he got close, Michael's voice roared through the house. Drop the hell down! Lights flooded in, red and blue, sirens, boots pounding. Michael tackled Dan to the ground, cuffing him as officers poured into the house behind him. Dan screamed, fought. But it was over. Henry sat against the wall, bleeding from his temple, breathing hard. Michael rushed to him. You okay? Henry nodded, dazed. You timed that well. Michael smirked, still out of breath. I tracked his truck outside town. Figured he'd try something. I followed him in dark. He turned to Ava. She was frozen. Michael stepped toward her. It's okay. He's gone. She ran into his arms, then into Henry's, and for the first time in weeks, maybe years, Henry let himself cry. Right there on the floor, with his arms around the child who had started as a stranger and become something far more. 2 months later. The courtroom was silent as the judge reviewed the file. Henry sat beside Ava, his suit slightly wrinkled, hands folded tightly. Michael was in the row behind them. Gloria was there too, and Carla. The judge finally looked up. After reviewing all submitted reports, background checks, and psychological evaluations, it is the court's decision to grant permanent legal guardianship of Ava Green to Henry Callahan. Gasps, soft applause, quiet joy. Ava looked up at Henry. We did it, he smiled, eyes glassy. No, you did. She took his hand. You can call me Dad now, he said gently. She shook her head. I don't want to. He blinked. I want to call you home. He choked back tears. So did Michael. 1 year later, Henry's truck moved slowly through Providence again, just like before. Same route, same bins, same streets. But this time, something was different. Because in the passenger seat sat Ava, shoes tied, backpack on, sketch pad in her lap. The silence between them wasn't empty anymore. It was full of second chances, of healing, of family. As they rounded the corner, Henry pointed. See that? That's where your mom and I used to have lunch before she moved out of town. Ava smiled. Tell me more. And he did. He told her everything. Because now, finally, someone was listening. Some stories don't need fireworks to be unforgettable. Just a quiet moment, a second chance, and someone who stays. If this story stayed with you even after the screen faded to black, let us know in the comments. Leave a like to keep stories like this alive. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe, because the next one might hit even deeper.